Well, isn't this a surprise? But that said, I am very, very grateful. Thank you so much. Considering I started this year with 500 subs after having done YouTube for a year already, it was kind of a surprise that so many of you just appeared out of thin air, seemingly. Well, not out of thin air, I know exactly where you came from, but you know, that's by the by. With that in mind, just before we proceed with this video, I do just want to quickly clear up a few things. I apologise about getting mixed up in regards to tics. I assumed they were a trait of autism when they are in fact a trait of OCD, that's on me. I was also informed that Dolores' sound that she makes is a cultural noise that is made when a person hears something they shouldn't, which makes a lot of sense now that it's been explained to me. So anyway, I thought today's video would be a nice little Q&A introduction for all of our newbies, since the structure this similarly to my regular videos where each section has its own focus, so anyone asking a specific question can more easily find their answer. So without further ado, it's Q&A time. What made you decide to make a channel, and what advice can you give to a growing channel? I've always had an interest in YouTube, but never really knew how to go about it. Originally, back in 2018, I tried making a storytime animation channel, similar to Jaden Animations, but it was way too much effort and left the ground. I got really into listening to art commentary channels, namely Thuman and Hopeless Peaches, while I drew my comic pages. This was obviously before all the Art CC drama kicked off, but as you can see, that wasn't enough to turn me away. If anything, I think it motivated me even more because it was in regards to a community that I had come to art skills after finishing education. I've always liked the idea of making videos, but was never quite sure as to what kind I wanted to do, which is why it took so long, but I like to think I've found my footing now in that respect. If I could give any kind of advice, obviously make sure you're doing something you like, because if you're not, then people will be able to tell and it'll turn them away from your content pretty quickly. But also try to keep it consistent. Try to keep the same level of quality and maintain a regular schedule if you can. Not many people explain why, but we do value reliability in our entertainment. This tends to be why even less than amazing shows can garner an audience, and there's a reason TV shows and webcomics update at the same time every week. Our brains subconsciously use how long have you been on YouTube? Ooh, time to show my age. Even though my current channel is quite new, I've had several channels as far back as 2007. Only one of them is active now, and it's a portfolio channel, and most of the videos on it are private. The only time I show these videos is if I'm being considered for freelance work, or if I'm thinking of joining a reanimated project. What would you say were your biggest obstacles that you had to deal with during your time before 1K? I'd probably say the biggest one is confidence. I've never really had much of that to begin with, really, and other obstacles tend to extend from that for the most part. When you've been doing something for a while and only see very minimal results, even if you're doing it primarily for yourself, you're still proud enough to share it with the world, and garnering only a small amount of feedback from it can get you feeling kind of low, especially when it feels like you're trying to keep up with your peers but they are already way out ahead of you and you're just lagging behind like, wait for me, wait. It's important to remember that when you're building something from nothing with no prior audience or anything, it is going to take a while. It's most likely not you or your content, you just need to make your way through the crowd, and the unfortunate thing is that YouTube is a very, very crowded platform. There's a lot of stuff on here and only so many hours in the day for people to see it, and that's extremely important to remember if you're prone to feeling down about your works like I am. All good things come with time. What's a theme/type of video you'd like to do more of in the future, and what is one subject you wish to make a video about but feel unable to? I want to do more fandom-based content about shows or media I like, and just basically use them as an excuse to be a huge nerd, whether that be analyses, rankings, reimaginings. I am a fandom kid at heart, so it'd be nice to lean into that side of things more in the future. I have a few of these planned already, so we'll just have to wait and see how they go down, and you guys are going to need to tell me which ones you like. Lately it feels like I've been talking more about the behaviours of fan bases within content rather than the actual content itself. I do enjoy the topics I've recently covered, and they are things that I'm passionate about, but I am a bit conscious about pigeonholing myself too much into just complaining about things and becoming an agony aunt, so I'm hoping that making more uplifting content as well will help to balance that out. I also wouldn't mind collabing at some point. I made it a goal of mine to only consider approaching people to collaborate after I've managed to earn my first 1K subs by myself. I've approached people in the past for thoughts on things, but that feels more akin to data gathering more than collaborating. So I guess we'll see what ideas we can whip up, and also if I can pluck up the courage to actually ask anyone and see who might be up for it. In terms of videos I feel I can't do, sometimes I'm very tempted, I will admit, to turn into a tea channel for a hot second. Oftentimes a topic or controversy will come about that will stir some particularly strong feelings in me, usually in regards to the commentary community, but I've already made it pretty clear that I don't want to make videos on specific dramas or people for now. I'll leave the roasting of problematic people to the professionals. Thanks, but no thanks. What's your favourite part about making videos? I I think my favourite part is half the initial ideas stage where I just brainstorm about what videos I want to make. The wardrobe next to my desk has a bunch of sticky notes on it with different video ideas for me to pick from, and then I also enjoy compositing everything together like a neat little collage. It feels insanely rewarding when you see all of the different aspects of your work coming together into one final result. For reference, my least favourite part at the moment is recording the speed paints. Not drawing them, just recording them, because I may have mentioned this in the past, but I'm using a really old laptop, and I have affectionately dubbed this laptop the pizza box, because it's really starting to chug at this point, and you can see the footage freezing from time to time. I keep saying to myself that I will commit some funds to a new PC, but it's justifying that amount of money in my head. I will get round to it. How do you edit your videos? What do you use / general process? So in regards to what I use, for normal illustrations I will use Clip Studio Paint. If it's animation, I will use Toon Boom Harmony Advanced. For audio, I will use Audacity. I did take a crack at using Cakewalk for a time, which is a program my dad uses because he makes music for a hobby, but the interface was a bit too unfamiliar. To record my speed paints, I use OBS, which is also what I use for streaming from time to time. For video editing, I use Adobe After Effects because it's the software I have the most proficiency in, and for rendering, I use Adobe Media Encoder. My general process involves creating the scripts first. I try to aim for around 2,500 words, which I believe translates to around 10 minutes of speaking time, after which I have a list of drawing ideas to choose from, or if none of those ideas seem to be working, I will do some animation or comic work. I will switch between doing voice work and drawing at the same time, and once those are done, I will then add the voiceover into After Effects and coordinate the talk sprites alongside it, because if everything else is added in first, this will make the software lag. After that's done, I will add in all the other assets and send it through to render. While the video is rendering, I will draw up the thumbnail and post a thumbnail reveal to Twitter, and then schedule the video once rendering is finished. What gives you the energy to make comics, YouTube videos, and art, and how do you feel that you have so many friends, especially since most of them are artists and gamers? Well, what happens is I get possessed by the ghosts of digital artists long past and black out. After I've come to, everything has already been done for me, and for some reason there are always a bunch of severed fingers everywhere, so I've started to dry them out and make necklaces out of them. No, but really. In terms of energy, sometimes it is difficult to stay on top of everything, which is why I'm glad that I don't rely on any of this stuff for income, which allows me to take a break from it if I need to. This obviously isn't possible for those that do, which is why scheduling, and more important, scheduling yourself some days off and sticking to them is very, very important. In regards to the friend bit, I appreciate that people like me and I like hanging out with you guys too, but I don't have as many friends as it probably seems because I'm quite wary that, as nice as many might seem, we are still strangers to each other. I have acquaintances, sure, and there are fellow artists, creators, gamers, and fans who I really enjoy speaking to and supporting in their own endeavours. It feels good, and it's often really encouraging to be around people who share the same interests and have similar goals, but even though it seems nice to call someone an internet friend, this place is still very much the Wild West, and you never truly know who that person is until it's too late. The unfortunate thing that I've recently come to learn about growing a platform is that eventually you need to take a step back and start seriously considering the way in which you interact with those around you. So I feel like I do have a nice community at the moment, but I know that I still need to be cautious because as time goes on and more people join my little corner, having a bunch of people considering you a friend in this way can start to become a bit parasocial, and it's also going to be a lot to cope with. I'm not saying this to be a bitch, and I'm not saying that I'm not anyone's friend, but please understand that I need to be responsible for the example that I set from here on out in terms of my interactions. What type of content do you enjoy making the most? They involve a fair bit of work, but I do really enjoy my essay type videos, and they're probably what I would regard as some of my best work on the channel. There's just something about seeing a topic through from initial intrigue to research to presentation of your findings that makes me feel proud of myself. Oh my god, I don't know if you can hear it, but I think Storm Eunice is trying to get me. I've never really been thought of as a smart person, so feeling like I'm doing well in this area of my content is just a nice confidence boost, you know? I also enjoy doing my little animation memes, even though in stark contrast to my video essays, they are probably some of my worst work. But in the grand scheme of things, what's considered to be good or bad shouldn't come before the enjoyment that it brings you, so I don't plan on stopping making animations with that in mind. When did you first get into art? What's the story behind it? I've always been into art, but I never took it seriously enough to consider it a career choice until I was around 17 or 18, despite the fact that I've probably been drawing since I was 4 years old. I did do a lot of painting and crafts and things like that, but there was a noticeable stagnancy to my stuff because I was more just being told by my art teacher what kind of art I should be doing, and never really got invested in actually developing those skills. Depression probably also played a big role in that too, now that I think of it. It was only when I was choosing what kind of courses I wanted to do at university and saw that there was was an animation course that I finally decided to make a conscious effort to improve, and it just kind of went from there. I think what really got me wanting to pursue it properly was getting back into some old cartoons and shows I watched as a kid. I somehow stumbled across all the Ed, Edd n Eddy episodes uploaded to YouTube some good years ago now, and that was the show that made me want to get into animation because of how fun and zany it was, and because it brought joy to my life in a time where I was experiencing a low point mental health-wise. What was the inspiration for your art style? My inspiration is that I wanted to kind of blend the prettiness and the visual appeal of anime with the wackiness and humour of the 90s and early 2000s cartoons. Though, to be honest, I'm not the biggest anime fan anymore because I've kind of grown out of the usual demographic that it caters to and was also getting kind of sick of all the unnecessary fan service. So as a result, you can kind of see those anime influences, but I think my style is definitely a lot more westernized now. I think my main style was pretty inspired by that 2012-2015 cringe Tumblr era, so things like Homestuck, Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall, all those kinds of shows definitely meshed into my style quite a bit. I've also been really getting into the Art Nouveau aesthetic since finding my groove on YouTube, so I think that's a type of style I want to learn about more and delve into in the future. It really reminds me of an anime called Gothic that I liked when I was younger, so maybe that's why it's drawing me in so much. What inspired your avatar? Is the hat a Hilda reference? Okay, so a lot of people keep saying that she looks like Hilda, but it is sadly a coincidence. I'll be honest, she doesn't really have an inspiration that I can trace back to. I remember thinking that since most of the ArtCC channels I was watching had some form of cute girl persona, I would take a stab at doing my own, and the only defining thing that I wanted for her in the beginning was for people to immediately recognise her as an artist, hence the beret. But also as well, I didn't actually want her to be just a persona, I wanted her to be kind of a blank canvas character that I could develop and have grow with me as things moved along. And I like to think at this point that Mint is definitely starting to develop her own sense of character. I don't want to get anyone too excited, but after a bit more brainstorming and developing, I might create another little story focusing on Mint and friends, who are the characters that she has interacted on TikTok with, but that's a bit hush-hush for now, so we'll see what happens. I would, however, recommend everyone watch Hilda because both the series and the film are absolutely amazing. Like, I'm not kidding, that show is 10 out of 10. If you like Bee and Puppycat and Gravity Falls, this is a show for you. Do you prefer drawing Mint with a detailed nose or a simplified nose? It depends on the medium and the platform, I think. If it's TikTok, then I'll give her a really simple nose because the drawings I do there are a lot more loose and geared towards being funny than looking good. If it's for YouTube or an illustration, then I'll give her the usual nose that my art typically has. Have you ever seen your old drawings and said, wow, I grew really good as an artist? Absolutely. I know I'm better now than when I started out. Hell, I'm better now than I was 6 months ago. I like what I make and what I draw makes me happy, and that should be all that matters. Oftentimes though, I do sometimes feel like I'm lagging a bit behind because I started late and only got a decent tablet at age 20, and sometimes that can dredge up a few insecurities, but I've kind of come to understand that my art doesn't need to be mind-blowing or anything like that, regardless of age, skill level, discipline, and so on. It serves its purpose for being an outlet for my feelings and sense of self, and that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be. What inspired you to start a webtoon? And what was your main inspiration for making your webtoon? I initially made my webcomic as a way to cope with a stressful job I had at the time. There was never really a huge amount of thought put into it, and everything that happened in it was just decided on as I sat down to draw the next page each week. I only really decided to start posting when I found out about Tapas. I did initially try to upload to Webtoon as well, but everything just seemed worse on there by comparison. So for the first 2 years, it was posted on Tapas exclusively. My two main inspirations were the fact that superhero movies were dominating cinema at the time, so I was just really invested in creating my own little hero universe. And also I found out that one of my fave bands from school had released a new album, which really helped me get some ideas flowing. And all of this resulted in the creation of Synthesis, which is a pile of hot garbage, but I don't care because it's fun to work on. What items, pen, tablets, etc. do you use to draw and make videos? I have one drawing tablet that I use, which is a little bit older than the pizza box, and it is the Wacom Cintiq 13 HD. I bought it using some student grant money for my bachelor's course before the scheme that gave you that money got scrapped. And that was also how I paid for a fair few of the more expensive programs that I now own. Yeah, back in 2015 and 16, there just weren't as many options for things like drawing tablets, much less anything affordable, so about 80% of all people in my animation class owned a Wacom tablet. Procreate wasn't a thing yet, and Wacom still ruled a large share of the market. Nowadays, I'm really glad that people have so many cheaper options like an iPad and an iPencil, you know, quote-unquote cheap options, because I remember asking my dad to review the order and click buy for me because I just couldn't do it, and I would rigorously tell anyone who asked for recommendations to look around as much as they could before committing because Wacom was not wallet friendly. They still aren't, man. What are your favourite books, shows and movies, and what do you do to help yourself chill out? So I'm just gonna reel off both my favourites and some nostalgic shows off the top of my head, which are Sailor Moon, Soul Eater, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Tracy Beaker, Derry Girls, Keeper and the Age of Wonder Beasts, Angel Beats, Gosick, and Black Rock Shooter. I like books that cover local histories of different places or histories about a certain thing, so I have a book I'm reading right now which is about the history of lighthouses, which is pretty interesting. I also love books about folklore and mythical creatures and old fables. As a teen, my favourite author was Maggie Stiefvater, who incorporates a lot of those things into her books. I would recommend the Raven Cycle trilogy of hers, it is just fantastic. As far as movies go, some favourites are The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogies, Disney Renaissance Hercules, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Howl's Moving Castle, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Deadpool 1 and 2, and Ant-Man and the Wasp. I feel like I've kind of forgotten what chilling out is in the past 6 months, but I like having some soft lights and candles on and watching Netflix. Does that count? What's your Hogwarts house? We do not endorse JK Roundabout in this house, but I'm a Gryffindor. Why should everyone buy Clip Studio Paint for £3.49 a month? Cause it's a bargain. But seriously, if you can afford it at the time of it being on sale, I would recommend buying it then because it's a one-time purchase and it'll probably work out cheaper. I know that in the UK at least it comes to about like £16 for like the base program, which is a steal. In all seriousness, how do you prioritise your work and how do you keep focused on your work and avoid distractions? In terms of avoiding distractions when working, I generally don't. If I've been working for a while and my mind starts to wander, then I stand up and let it. If it's something important I need to get done, then I'll set a timer for about 20 minutes and just let myself goof off for a bit, and this is generally enough time for my mind to settle and I can get back to work. An important thing with this as well is to not sit in the same place because a location change will also help to reset your brain. I try not to force myself through tasks because that just makes the distractions even worse and your quality output will be worse too, because if you're getting distracted in the first place, I've come to recognize this as either needing a break or the first signs of burnout, so I would recommend not ignoring it. But of course, take this with a bit of salt because this is different for everyone, so if you have a method of working that suits you, that's brilliant. Do you like chocolate chip cookies? Of course I do. What psychopath doesn't? I kind of prefer cookie dough though. What do you think was your biggest inspiration for doing what you love, and why do you like the things you like? My inspiration was that the shows I enjoyed and the art I consumed helped me to forget that I was sad. That sounds awful out loud, but I don't know how else to lay it out as plainly as that. The things I like and that inspire me are generally things that I clung to as I grew up to block out all the bad things that piled up in real life. But I don't recommend doing that anymore because the more you try to block it, the harder it's going to hit you when you're brought back. What drawing software do you recommend? I'm assuming that's what you're asking here, but all the way, Clip Studio Paint. I know we're all probably sounding like shills for hyping this program up so much, but there's a reason, and that reason is that it's good, so get on it. What brings you the most joy day to day? I'm gonna sound like a massive nerd, but I really like making lists, and getting to cross things off as finished really helps me to feel like I have some semblance of control over my life. And sometimes this spills over to doing things for other people as well. I think my partner sometimes looks at me while I'm clearing up all of the stuff off the floor and thinking, what are you doing? I like getting things done because it means I can relax knowing that everything has been taken care of, and future me isn't gonna have to have a bunch of niggling annoyances all around 24/7 when she doesn't need it. How would you describe your life in 3 words? I'm too busy. I just want to take a nap. Things have kind of been non-stop since August last year, but hopefully things can go back to normal soon in terms of workload and I can actually learn what chilling out is again. And for our final question, how did you come out and do you have any tips? I have a video detailing my coming out story if you would like to check that out, but coming out for me was an extremely difficult thing to do right up until it actually happened. Afterwards, it did indeed feel like a weight had been lifted. The most terrifying aspect was telling my dad, who was Catholic, but reassuringly, he loves his family more than he cares about that stuff. If you're fairly confident that your loved ones will support you, then just gently let them know in your own time. There's no rush. The best advice I can give you about coming out is that honestly, you don't always need to, and especially shouldn't feel pressured to. After I came out to my parents, they asked whether I was going to let everyone else know, and I was like, the people who are truly invested in having me in their lives will be able to deal with finding out on their own. Plus, for a lot of us, coming out shouldn't even be an obligation because it's still very risky in a lot of places. It may feel like it's normal to be gay now, but that's only the case for very specific places. It's still punishable by death in 5 countries, and there are still a lot of very opinionated, often very malicious people walking around wherever you are in the world. My boss recently came back from a holiday in Poland and was chatting with some people about it and whether or not they would like to visit themselves, but in my head, Poland already had a big fence around it with "No gays allowed" scribbled all over. If we want to normalise things like the LGBTQ+ community, then in my opinion, it should feel as normal as someone finding out you like a particular book, rock or listen to a certain type of music. And just because you were able to bust out of that closet doesn't mean it's now off limits. It feels good to be out in the open, but sometimes doing what you need to and sometimes hiding to survive is okay as well. And I think we can wrap it up there. Hope you guys liked hearing me talk about myself so much. For some reason this feels so much weirder and like more personal than a story time. And again, thank you all so much for being here and showing an interest in what I do. I hope that you like what I bring out after this, but I guess we will have to wait and see on that front. Thank you for watching and stay safe everyone. Bye!